Hey, welcome back. You're listening to the final segment of the weekend edition of the Korelin Economics Report. Time out. Korelin, appreciate you joining me. Save the best for last in this particular case. Don't laugh, Rule. Got Rick Rule on the line with me. I have known Rick for probably about 20 years. He's probably one of the most successful, take out the word probably, he's one of the most successful guys in our industry. There's no question about that. A really, really good guy. I have to say, also, in the interest of full disclosure, because we want to be as transparent as possible on this particular program, I have recently opened up an account with Rick, and he and his colleagues are now handling a portion of our defined benefit pension plan. That's not an advertisement. That is simply stating a fact. You guys need to be aware of everything that Big Al is doing. How you doing, Rick? How's everything down in California? It's colder than hell up here.
Well, I won't make you feel envious about that, Al. And thank you for the business. We appreciate it. In fact, I'm embarrassed to say you and I have known each other closer to 25 years, but who cares? 5 years among friends.
I had hair back in those days. We had an interesting election, culminating about 11 o'clock West Coast time last Tuesday. The president was reelected. I kind of feel like that was almost a mandate. It's a mandate for a course of action that I personally don't believe in, but I think the majority of the country certainly said, albeit a small majority of the country, certainly said we like entitlements, we like big government, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about that?
I agree with most of your assessment, Al. I'm not, as you know, either a Democrat or a Republican personally, and I'm not certain that either party was for smaller government. But I think the mandate, I think what the electorate spoke to, certainly in the exit polls, was, as an example, war on the 1%, which is a different way of saying war on producers, um, the politics of envy, class warfare, that type of thing. You know that the only sort of mainstream politician that's ever made any sense to me in my entire lifetime is your friend and mine, Ron Paul, who was nominally Republican, but was really a libertarian at heart, perhaps a constitutional conservative. I have to say, I would have been disappointed with either mainstream outcome in this particular election. But your description of the discourse, I think, was sadly accurate. In fact, here at Sprott, we're, I think, going to have some very, very nice polo type shirts printed up voicing our opinion, which will say, Sprott, proudly serving the 1% and those who aspire for 30 years, and see what happens.
Put me in line for one of those shirts, by the way. I want to say, well, the thing that I don't understand about the direction our country is going, Rick, is, I didn't know you back in the days when you worked at a restaurant in Vancouver, BC, and you didn't know me back in the days when I rode a motorcycle and I had hair down to my shoulders. But the fact of the matter is, we both kind of made up our minds at one time in our life that we were going to turn this thing around and make something out of ourselves. And you certainly have. And I find it to be incredible that our thoughts and our aspirations of those days aren't shared by everybody in the United States today. But you know what, my friend? They're not.
Well, I guess that's right. I hear a lot of criticism myself of younger people today, and my experience with younger people, my immediate experience is very different. Here at Sprott, as an example, on both sides of the border, we probably have 30 reasonably high level people below the ages of 35. And when I compare them to where I was at age 30, I'm astonished at how spectacular they are. I also very recently mentored a group of Loyola University students at New Orleans in conjunction with the New Orleans Investment Conference. Absolutely high quality people. But I think what happens is that your view of the world is constrained by your immediate community. And my immediate community is fantastic. I have no explanation for the way the rest of the country votes.
I have to say I agree with you 100%. My immediate community is pretty darn good also. Let's talk about those immediate communities. You and I are very, very actively involved on a daily basis in terms of the resource sector of the stock market, in terms of precious metals, etc. I view the election, as do most of the other guests on this particular program, along with our listeners. I personally view the results of the election, Rick, as being incredibly bullish for the resource sector. What do you think?
I think you're right, Al. Bad for the country, good for me. at Sprott, we manage about $10 billion, $4 billion of which is in the bullion side. I expect that our bullion trade and our equity trades will do very, very, very well. I feel bad about what will happen for investors who don't understand these, as an example, low interest rates or this quantitative easing, this fancy word for counterfeiting, for what it is. I, however, don't have any obligation to them. I don't work for them. I work for my clients, just as you work for your listeners. And the fact is that some good comes out of every bad situation. And I don't want to say I'm afraid, but I have a sense that the good that will fall out of this situation will fall disproportionately on me, which I guess in a whole series of outcomes isn't the worst that I could expect.
On a serious note, of course, it's not the worst thing that you could wish for. But on another serious note, I think that the direction, Rick, that our country is going in is very, very definitely negative. And I have to tell you, I got in some very, very heated discussions a month or so prior to the election with liberal friends of mine who felt that where we're going is exactly the right place to go. There's nothing to fear about big government. Quantitative easing is working just fine. It makes all the sense in the world. I mean, that was my reaction. You know what my reaction was? Can you fill up this wine glass again for me? I mean, I got to tell you, to me, that's very misguided thinking, Rick.
I agree. If I had access to a sort of a wish list, if I could conjure up a genie, many of the things that your liberal friends are trying to cause to occur, I would agree with. The difficulty is that I still remember third grade math. And I don't understand how you add a column of negative numbers and get a positive. The problem that my conservative friends have and my liberal friends have, the problem that my friends have that believe in big government, is that it seems to me that they've failed in math, Al. If you take, just at the federal government level, the on-balance sheet liabilities in the range of $17 trillion. By the way, that's 17 followed by 12 zeros. And then you take the off-balance sheet liabilities, variously estimated at between $65 trillion and $100 trillion. And you look at the federal deficit of at least $1 trillion a year, 500 billion of which is borrowed and 500 billion of which is counterfeited. It is very, very difficult for me to understand how we dig ourselves out of this mess. You and I, as early physics students, would have thought that if you had dug your way into a very, very, very deep hole, the right way to get out of it is to stop digging and start climbing. But what the people who believe in big government seem not to understand is that these obligations are real. And to me, it seems very, very problematic.
I heard a bigger number today. It was kind of interesting. And I don't remember where I read it, but the number that I heard was that the debt was looking to go very quickly up to around 22, 23 trillion. And, it's, how can anybody in their right mind think that that's going to work? It's an absolute impossibility to ever pay that money back.
When I listened to the candidates in the debates, and by the way, if you ever wanted to confirm yourself as a gold bug, all you had to do was listen to the debates, I think. But if you listen to the candidates in the debate, it was interesting or horrifying, depending on your point of view. Listening to the nature of the discussion, there were personalized anecdotes, there were stories, there were feelings, there was no math. And that was very difficult for me. If I did believe in government, what I would hope for is a president and political leadership that would lead as opposed to govern. I would look for, as an example, a speech like Obama gave the first time he was running, where he spoke on race. Early in his first career, when he got in trouble, or his first run, pardon me, where he got in trouble as a consequence of the vitriolic racism of his pastor, I thought that he gave a speech on race that was truly an example of leadership. And while it wasn't sufficient to get me to vote for him, I admired him for that speech. That's just about the last speech that he gave that I think showed any particular leadership, which didn't distinguish him, by the way, from his opponent. But the difficulty I have with the discussion that we're having is that there doesn't seem to be any leadership, and there seems to be a studious ignorance of the facts in an attempt, I would suspect, to get control of enough power to deliver benefits to constituents.
Kind of scary.
Hard to say, but it's true.
Hard to say, but it's true. There's a lot of truth in that statement. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed the show this weekend. Wrapped it up with Rick Rule. Anybody I want to throw in, by the way, anybody who's going to be in San Francisco this next weekend, Hard Asset Investment Conference, Rick's going to be there, Big Al is going to be there. Drop by and say hello. Rick, thanks so much, buddy.
Al, thank you, as always.